This is space in 5 minutes. Let's start with astronomy, the science of the stars. Astronomers find, measure, and map things in outer space. Please do not confuse this with astrology. Now, astrology means using your birth date to make a horoscope based on the constellation that you were born under. Some people think that your birth date affects your character and that you can plan your life according to favorable star patterns. It's not science, but hey, it can be fun. Although astrology was useful in the past because it's based on a map of the stars, like this. People told stories about the constellations so they could remember where they were. People realized that the same constellations rose and set each night just like the sun and the moon, but the constellations moved at a different rate from the sun and the moon. Here you can see the northern hemisphere, and here is the southern hemisphere. Around the rim is the equator. Now, to understand this view, you have to pretend that you are on the North Pole looking up or on the South Pole looking down. This way you see two totally different skies. Nowadays, we've mapped many more stars because we have very good telescopes. This map makes it easier to see our Milky Way. Let's look at some vocabulary. Now, solar means sun, so a sun system is a solar system. The galaxy is our star system. Constellations are star patterns that we see from Earth. To orbit is to go around something, like the Earth orbiting the sun, and the ellipse is the shape of the orbit. It's not a circle, it's like a squished circle. An astronomer is a person who does astronomy. And let's focus on the heliocentric and geocentric ideas. The heliocentric is the idea that the sun is the center of at least our solar system. And the geocentric idea is older, and people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe. Now we should talk about a light year. This is the time that it takes one particle of light to travel 1 year at the speed of light. We measure the distance between stars in light years because the distances are so big. We know that we're seeing past events on stars because they're so far away. By the time their light arrives at Earth, maybe billions of years have passed. The stars we see might not actually be there anymore. Let's talk about some astronomers who aren't here anymore. Copernicus. He thought that the planets orbited the sun because he noticed patterns in eclipses. He thought that the view we have of an eclipse would not make sense if everything was orbiting around the Earth. So he wrote a book on the heliocentric model, but he didn't publish it until the year he died. Now, dying the same year that your book is published is a very good way to avoid criticism. He was afraid that people would argue against him or throw him in jail because they believed in the geocentric model. It's difficult to change the world. Galileo was born 20 years after Copernicus died. Copernicus had written his book and it had time to circulate, but people were hesitant to talk about it. Imagine that there's one book in the whole world that said the Earth moves around the sun. Well, Galileo was Italian, so he read that book, and he agreed with it. He made his own telescopes, and he looked at the planets, and he found very good evidence that the Earth orbited the sun. He published his ideas, and they made the Pope mad. Galileo did not leave room for religion in his explanation of space, so the church made him pretend to give up his ideas and stay under house arrest for the last years of his life. Galileo couldn't go and speak around the world, but people could come to him if they wanted. Here you can see Galileo's telescope on the left and a more modern telescope on the right. Galileo's telescope was made of 2 different glass lenses and could magnify the planets by about 20 times. This let him see many things that no one had ever seen before. Newer telescopes use a large mirror to collect light and focus it into your eye. They can make things look over 100 times larger. Now, as far as astronomers, we should also look at Johannes Kepler. He was born in Germany and was alive at the same time as Galileo. He realized that the moon affected the tide, even though Galileo didn't believe him. Kepler also saw the first supernova, and he believed in the heliocentric model too. Kepler wasn't punished as much for his beliefs because he wrote about the spiritual world in his plan of the stars. He also made horoscopes for the Emperor of Prague, so he liked a bit of astrology too. It was probably a fun job. Now, let's jump a couple of 100 years into the future and look at the next astronomer to change our ideas about the universe. Edwin Hubble was an American and lived in California during the early part of the 20th century. By that time, we had much stronger telescopes, and the biggest one was 5 meters long. Hubble used these telescopes to see that some faraway stars were actually moving even farther away. This helped him decide that there were more galaxies than ours. Now we have a telescope named after Hubble. It's orbiting the Earth, and it can take very clear pictures without the interference of the Earth's atmospheres. These are the best pictures that we have of other galaxies.